And thank you for listening and supporting K Squid. We certainly appreciate your support. If you want to make a donation, you can always go to ksqd.org and go push the red donate button, and we appreciate you so much. All right, on the phone with me is Nicole Coburn. Nicole Coburn, sorry. She is the CEO of the County of Santa Cruz, and I think that means she's in charge of the money. Hi, Nicole. Thanks for joining us on Talk.
Hi.
Hi, how are you? Okay, so I want to talk first about the SHIELD program, which just got set up by the County Board of Supervisors of Santa Cruz County. And Felipe Hernandez couldn't be here tonight, but he sent you to talk about it. So tell us what it is and what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, so the SHIELD committee was an idea that Supervisor Hernandez and Supervisor Martinez worked on together. They brought it to the board on January 27th. SHIELD stands for Safeguard Health, Inclusion, Essential Services, and Local Defense. And it's been established in the context of everything that's happening related to the immigration enforcement actions that we've been seeing in Minnesota and other places. Of course, it's been very concerning to everyone across the nation, what's been happening and what we've been seeing. So the SHIELD committee is going to consist of the two supervisors and myself. We're going to be collaborating with different partners and working on ways, recommendations, and directives that we might bring to the board to help support our community as we might see these actions or something similar head out west to California at some point. So we just want to be prepared and bring anything forward to the Board of Supervisors that might make sense to help support in any ways that we can.
Now, in order to know who needs the support, you have to collect information about where people live. Is that going to be hard given the fear of government officials in general? I would imagine you're going to be going uphill a little bit to know who needs the services that you're thinking of providing.
Yeah, well, what we're looking at is services related to people who may be undocumented or have other statuses that the federal government has been targeting. And so what we know is that, obviously there are people around our county who might fall into these categories, but we're particularly worried about South County, and because of the large population of immigrants and farm workers who live in South County. Obviously, there are people around the county who might fall into this, but we're going to be. It's more about policies and things the county can do. For instance, we have various protocols and policies in some of our more front-facing departments, like our Human Services Department and our Health Services Agency, where a lot of people are coming in for healthcare and safety net services. And so we want to make sure staff know what they can do if the ICE or Border Patrol shows up, what they can do in terms of contacting help within the county, whether it be county council to confirm warrants. So we want staff to know our protocols, to be properly trained on them. So we're going to make sure that all staff have that training, that there's awareness. We're taking a look at all the protocols already in place and looking at where there might not be protocols in place to make sure we have everything established in anticipation of something maybe happening. And then on the more outward-facing activities, we're going to be looking at things that other jurisdictions like counties and cities are doing related to property or other sorts of ordinances or policies that we might consider bringing here. I know that the city of Watsonville and Cabrillo College recently took a stand to prohibit ICE from staging on public properties in their jurisdictions or on their properties. So we're taking a close look at that to see if it would make sense for the county to do something similar.
I have so many questions. I guess I'll just go through them and hope I get to them all. Watching what was happening in Minneapolis, it felt, at least from far away and reading the news, that ICE was just doing whatever it wanted regardless of local jurisdiction. For example, it seemed like, the mayor of Minneapolis, the governor of Minnesota, seemed unable to stop these these administrative warrants and people's cars getting broken into and people hauled out of them and left the cars right there. And then the murders of people and not being able to investigate. It seemed like a long list of overstep of local authority. So what kinds of things are being discussed to try to point to where there is power to protect undocumented immigrants?
Yeah, I mean, the federal government, there is a lot of power that they have in what they can do, and there are limitations on what local jurisdictions can do. Obviously, I think if they're engaged in illegal activities, there is potential for law enforcement to get involved and for the district attorney to potentially file charges against illegal actions that might be occurring. But in terms of them, conducting their actions around a city or unincorporated area of our county, we can't just get involved and interfere with them for any reason. And the sheriff, has been talking in different forums about what he can and can't do. There's various state law about, kind of going through what happens if ICE comes in contact with law enforcement. So, but there are things we can look at in terms of trying to put into place potentially, property, putting into our local ordinance, where they might be able to stage or not. Now, there are things they might do that we just cannot prevent, but we will try to look at what we might be able to put into our local regulations that at least help make it more difficult for them to either stage or get organized as they're preparing for certain actions.
Let's talk more about what the sheriffs, if you can remember some of the things they said they could or could not do to protect people, or at least not cooperate, because there are different, from what I understand, and maybe you can correct me on this, depending on the county's setup, there are either rules where they can or cannot cooperate. Can you talk a little bit about those protocols that the sheriff would be able to not do or has to do to cooperate?
Yeah, and you may want to have him on one of your shows too.
For sure, yeah. Sorry to put you on the spot about.
Yeah, but there is some state law, and I know that there is the Truth Act, which is a part of state law, and if they are contacted by ICE, I think, and there's certain information they have to turn over, if requested. The sheriff is not reporting anything on their own. They actually don't even collect information on a person's status with immigration status at all. But if ICE is seeking information, there is some stuff that they would have to turn over if requested, and I'm sure the sheriff could go into detail on that. There is certain training that the sheriff's required to provide in terms of California state law and the Trust and Truth Act in terms of those regulations. I think that if ICE contacts the jail, if they believe someone is in jail that might have a certain immigration status, that they want to interview or talk to, they have to provide certain notice to the sheriff's office. And, there are certain rules there that they have to follow. And I'm sorry, I don't know all the specific rules, but there are various procedures that the sheriff has to follow in terms of what sort of interactions they are permitted to allow or not allow.
Right. We did hear stories of people calling 911 when they were getting beat up by ICE for being observers. And it didn't seem like the police in Minneapolis, anyway, seemed to know what to do with those calls. And I would hope our local police are a little better informed, or at least willing to at least help people with their problems if they're getting hurt and their rights are being violated.
Yeah, we recently heard of an interview or a podcast on what 911 operators, if they're fully trained on what kinds of protocols they are giving law enforcement as calls are coming in. And so this is one example of an area that we're trying to get more information on and to talk about at the SHIELD committee to figure out if there's anything we can learn, any guidance we can give. And just, we're curious, what our regional 911 center has in place. So that's, another example of a topic that might come up at SHIELD.
I hate to make comparisons to preparing for a war, but you are in a way preparing for potential invasion of our cities by federal officers who have been documented to kill people. Let's not mince words. 2 American citizens were shot to death in the street. And so I can understand why the county of Santa Cruz, where there are a lot of undocumented people, would want to prepare. And also it feels like it's hard to prepare for a potentially lawless group of people that are heavily armed, entering, in a way that feels like an invasion. That's what the mayor of Minneapolis says it has felt like, and most reporters who are coming out of there saying, this is like nothing anybody's ever experienced in this country. So I applaud this project. It seems like a timely one, but to do before something happens.
Yeah, you know what this is much like? It's really like preparing for an emergency, right? We're coming up with a clear response plan in the event that this occurs, kind of like when we prepare for an earthquake or prepare for a flood. Like, we want to have a really clear plan for what our county staff, that they know what to do, that staff in the community know what to do. That's why I mentioned the training that we want to do with staff. Any outreach and partnerships that we want to do with CBOs and other organizations, so they're better informed and they have protocols and know their rights and know where to go for resources. It really is having adequate preparation before we get into the actual event or emergency.
Which all sounds like a really good idea. Where could the public access, the process that this SHIELD committee is going to be going through to shore up its resources in the event of some sort of large incursion? Where could people follow kind of the progress of this SHIELD committee?
We have a report back to the Board of Supervisors on March 10th, and so that's when we'll be talking more about what our initial research and findings are and what our next steps are. So I imagine that the SHIELD committee will be coming back to the board to report on an occasional basis. So our next report will be March 10th. And then at that meeting, we'll let everyone know when we're coming back again with further information. But we'll try to make it as visible as possible. We also have at the county a website. If folks go to the county homepage at Santa Cruz County ca.us, there's a link from the homepage related that will take you to our sanctuary page, where there's all kinds of resources on there related to immigration, LGBTQ, healthcare, things where we're seeing cuts and things go away or change. That's where we've been posting all kinds of flyers, pamphlets, phone numbers. So I encourage anyone to go there to check out those resources.
Thank you. And we have about 10 minutes left. I wanted to talk about maybe some things that don't feel like an immediate emergency, but that are being impacted. You mentioned a few of them, like cuts to federal funds for health care, for example. And the other side of this emergency is that people are so afraid they're not going to the doctor, and they wait till things are chronic or critical, and end up in ER. I wonder if county behavioral health and also the health department at the county level is looking at how to meet the moment, so to speak, and try to give people the care they need before it ends up as a critical problem.
Yeah, we have. I mean, we have about a third of our county. So we have a population of 270,000 people in Santa Cruz County, and about a third of our population is on Medi-Cal. So that varies, but right now it's about 80,000 people. And we've been estimating that a significant number of those could fall off Medi-Cal because of all the changes that are happening from H.R. 1, the Federal Reconciliation Bill. So we could see up to potentially between 30 and 40,000 people falling off Medi-Cal for one reason or another, because there's additional work requirements and various other requirements that are being put into place. So at the county level, we have an obligation to pay for emergency health care for people who fall below a certain income threshold. It's for our indigent health care. It's a state it's a mandate for us. And so before the Affordable Care Act, when there were fewer people on Medi-Cal, we had a program called MediCruise, which was funded to help pay for this emergency health care. And so that program has really dropped in funding over the years as people shifted to Medi-Cal. The Medi-Cal expansion has been really such a great thing for our country in terms of getting people onto health insurance. And so now that people are going to fall off, we're going to have to fund MediCruise again. But we're also looking at other programs. We are one of a handful of counties that are eligible for the County Medical Services Program, and we're currently trying to evaluate with that program whether or not it makes sense for us to buy in, so that they offer a certain level of health insurance. So we're going to evaluate that against funding MediCruise, and we're going to figure out where we can get the most benefit in terms of the costs that we would have to put in and the coverage that we would receive for people. But that either of those options have to do with our mandate to provide emergency health care for people at a certain, below a certain income threshold.
So Nicole Coburn of Santa Cruz County is talking with me about health care right now as we are looking at various impacts of the federal government changes on our county. The other one, I suppose, is the lack of extension of help for people on Obamacare. That's kind of a double whammy you're talking about, the work requirements and other restrictions on funding to Medicaid and Medi-Cal, and then on the other side of that, people falling off of Obamacare. So those people would apply to Medi-Cal, presumably, and maybe qualify. You think they'll just backfill the number of people that are coming off of it?
Well, yeah, I think the people who are on Obamacare, on Covered California, or on that, that part of the Affordable Care Act, I don't think many of those people are eligible for Medi-Cal. most of those people are above income thresholds, and so that's why they're getting insurance through the exchange. So I think that's another segment of the population that could be really hurt by all of this. And there are fewer people who would fall into that category potentially that we might see in our county. But what I'm hearing is quite a few people, because of the increase in their insurance rates through the exchange, are not paying for it anymore because they're just too expensive. So that, again, is another negative impact from what's happened at the federal level.
Yeah, votes matter, folks.
Votes matter a lot.
Hugely. And I just want to point out that the previous conversation we were having about the costs of ICE, raids and the immigration sweeps are billions of taxpayer dollars going to that, as if it's the biggest emergency, not our health needing care. And it's such infuriating thing to have these priorities and the cuts to taxes on the very wealthy. That's what they got. They got the big, beautiful bill. They got rich people getting richer. And here we are all struggling to keep the basics of health intact so that we can go to work and pay our high rents. There's my rant. I'm done. But, it's all connected. You can't live without your health. You also have to have a roof over your head. And while some people are getting incredibly rich, the majority of people are struggling. And that's what people talk about when they hear the word affordability. It's like, what affordability? It's going away to line the pockets of the oligarchs. And so single payer would be a good step to make sure we don't have to trade these things off, like rent or healthcare. Which will it be? And I'm sorry that seems like the county's going to bear a lot of the brunt, but that you maybe have this out that you were talking about being eligible for extra funding. So that won't backfill 100%, but it might help.
Well, that's not funding we're getting. That's funding we'll have to pay into one of those programs, like Medicruise or CMSP, the County Medical Services Program. We're actually currently not getting any additional funding for any of these cuts at the state level. So the state so far has not chosen to backfill counties for all these cuts. We're actually estimating our revenue losses to the county government from the Medi-Cal changes and the CalFresh changes will probably, and some other changes, are probably ranging from $5 to $50 million over the next 3 years. So that's going to hurt us greatly. And we're in a very tough budget situation in the coming 2 to 3 fiscal years. It's going to be very challenging for us.
Yeah, and a lot of this is because the federal government just took away a lot of the previous funding that had been promised by Congress. It wasn't like, they voted in in isolation. There was money coming, and then they brought it back. So we'll see how that goes after the midterms. That may change things. It may not. But that's another thing at stake during the next election cycle. Any last thoughts? We have a couple more minutes, and I've been speaking with Nicole Coburn. She is the CEO of Santa Cruz County. She's the person, I think your job involves overseeing the money. You're like the city manager, but at the county level. Is that correct?
I'm like the city manager, but for the county. So I have 20 departments, reporting or working with me, and I'm responsible for presenting a budget to the Board of Supervisors. And so there's a lot that I get involved in across the county. And so, responding and preparing for these federal immigration actions are just one of the many things on my plate. But I really encourage all your listeners to follow what's happening at the Board of Supervisors related to the SHIELD subcommittee. And we will also have, if anyone's interested, a forecast, a mid-year budget forecast and update on the board agenda on February 24th that will help to highlight and explain the challenges we're facing.
Thank you. I hope people attend these meetings because, this is our government at work. And if you have complaints or comments, you get to have your say as well as just understand how these things are done. And I applaud the supervisors for getting out ahead of this, hoping it will not happen. But if it does, it's nice to be prepared. And it's great to hear about your plans. So thank you for coming on the radio and telling us more about it. You're welcome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good luck with everything. Nicole Coburn has been my guest. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too. All right. I think probably sleeping would be something difficult if that was your job, but it's all of our jobs, right? Because it's our county. Thanks for listening to K-Squid's Talk of the Bay. I'll be back again next Thursday. I'm Rachel Ann Goodman. Coming up next, it is first person singular, followed by Ask Dr. Dawn. This is K-Squid, KSQD, Santa Cruz, KSQT, Perundale.